Welcome to the Ballet Help Desk podcast. My name is Jenny, and I am joined by my co-founder, Brett. We are both proud ballet moms who met backstage at our children's recital. During our kids' training, we found that resources were limited, and we relied on dance magazines and fellow parents in the lobby for information. Now that our children are embarking on their professional careers, we are excited to share our combined 20 years of experience as ballet moms with all of you. We will be bringing in experts to help make sense of this complex world of ballet training. In honor of International Boys Day, we wanted to take a momentary pause in our series on competitions and release a few pods spotlighting the male dancer training journey. We had the privilege of speaking with Patrick Frenette, American Ballet Theater core member and the founder of Boys Ballet Summer Intensive. Without further ado, let's jump right in.
Hello, I'm Brett, and I'm here with my co-founder, Jenny. And today we are lucky enough to be talking with Patrick Frenette. He is a dancer with the American Ballet Theater and also the co-founder of the Boys Ballet Summer Intensive. So Patrick, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Brett and Jenny. It is my pleasure to be here. I'm happy to share a part of my story and my experience as a dancer and co-founder of BBSI, a program very close to my heart and something me and my entire family are very passionate about. So yeah, let's get started.
That sounds great. Before we dive into questions, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and also what brought you to becoming a professional dancer?
So I come from Vancouver, British Columbia. It's in the westernmost part of Canada. I'd say I come from a long lineage of different artists in vast different forms. My grandmother was a potter and a painter. There were various different musicians in my family. And I think I had some distant relative he was a relative on the Grand Ole Opry at one point. So there's definitely a long lineage of arts and culture in my family. And it was a natural progression for my sister, who's a bit older than I, and I to find dance. It was a very natural progression from us to being immersed in music and culture at a very young age. Like many boys before me, I found my way into the studio through my older sister. Many girls at a young age, around 4 or 5, will definitely start taking up ballet lessons. That was my entryway into the studio, but I found my own passion for it very early on. At that point for us, my parents did a very good job of sussing out the different after school activities that we both did. So it wasn't just at 3 years old, all you're going to do all day long is ballet. Mm-hmm. We were nowhere near that point at that time. So ballet was one of the different activities we did. We both did soccer. Mm-hmm. We both did gymnastics and swimming and some different martial arts there. And there was no hangups for my family, there were no hangups on like the gender conforming after school activities. Yes, a guy would typically do the martial arts, the swimming, and maybe even the gymnastics. But everything I did, my sister did with me, and everything my sister did, I did with her. And this way, it brought us up together in a way that we really understood each other, and we're very tight. And we had a much more broad understanding of what you can do with your body and how you can move and what was going to be best for us. So as we got older, the other activities sort of just dissipated, and we found that we really did feel like ourselves in the ballet studio. So it wasn't necessarily doing ballet to be better at soccer or swimming. They would cross there. What we did find is that they would sort of cross the mobility that you would need for something like martial arts. You would find working through in ballet, or the prowess and the athleticism and the power that you need to be a stronger jumper or a turner that you need in dance, you can work on with sort of like gymnastic cross training or in martial arts. They would cross ways once in a while. However, one was not done to better suit the other activity. It was just the way that my sister and I approached it was from a place of harmony. And just as we got older, we found that really ballet was, and most above all, we just found that ballet was where the two of us and me specifically felt like we really belonged. And when we were about 5 and 6 years old, we moved to a very pre-professional ballet school called the Go Ballet Academy.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, it was one of the most forefront and prominent classical training facilities in the Western Hemisphere. And being in that environment from a very young age showed the two of us that this is a viable profession. This is something that is competed at the highest level. This is something that takes a lot of discipline, respect, and perseverance to get through. It's a lifelong commitment. It was strict and very disciplined, and it instilled good, respectful habits in all of its students to give ballet the significance that it deserves. Instead of recitals, our school was putting on full productions of La Femelle Gardée, Giselle, Sleeping Beauty, Le Corsaire, Jardin Animé, like the whole scene with Medora and Gulnare, the dream scenes that they would have. The level of excellence that these students were training at, I remember being just a boy when Alex Wong went from Canada, and she was the first Canadian to win the Prix de Lausanne. And he went on to get, it's honestly because of Alex that I found my way to ABT, because he was my childhood hero. He was incredible. And when he was 16 or 17, he received an ABT studio company offer. That just opened my world of what I wanted to do with my life. And not just Alex, we're dealing with the teachers there at the time were striving to be the best version of you that you can as a dancer. It was very apparent to the two of us. So we wanted to stay in that environment for as long as possible.
So did you stay there for your whole training?
No, unfortunately not. The two teachers that were in charge of the more senior training moved back to China. So my sister and I felt like we would have better training at this point if we could move to the United States. We weren't ready to both go to a large academy school.
Mm-hmm.
At 13 and 15, we both had offers to go to National Ballet School in Toronto, or the JKO school in New York City. But as any parent knows, if they have kids in dance, uprooting your family and going to move somewhere for the pure purpose of dance is a very big ask.
Mm-hmm.
And especially moving to a large city like Toronto or New York. My family wasn't in the place where we could move to Manhattan. So instead of moving to go to the school of ABT, we ended up in Orange County, where I worked with two former ABT dancers, Chris and Laura Martin. They trained me for about a year and a half. And then from there, that was how I found Dmitry and Jennifer Kulev at the Dmitry Kulev Classical Ballet Academy.
Right.
So Dmitry was my coach and my instructor for the better part of, I'd say, 3 years. I did my years of Youth America Grand Prix, the regional competition, and competing in the finals. That was when I really honed in on, okay, I am going to do this professionally. It was my first time really getting in front of company directors, school directors, and I could tell that these people saw something in me to invest in, that this no longer felt like a pastime. This no longer felt like something that I really enjoyed it and I have a passion for it and it comes naturally to me, so I want to keep doing it. No. At this point, I knew the work that needed to be done so that I could make the most out of my career. And
so what was that moment that you felt like, I'm going to, I can make this as a professional career? You mentioned that just a little bit earlier. What was that? Was there like a particular comment that someone made to you, or was it something within yourself?
A bit of both, I would say. My first wake-up call about the severity of ballet and the nature of what was going to be asked of me, it was when I was 11. From watching that, he gave me a scholarship to attend the Young Dancers program that year in New York City. And I went to New York at 11 with my family. And the first day I got into class, I saw the huge gap in capability between me and the other students. I knew what very accomplished dancers looked like, but from my perspective, I was looking at young men who were 6, 7, 8 years older than me. So I figured, okay, yeah, I stay in this school, I do my classes, I do my Royal Academy of Dance examinations, and then all the work that I will do is going to get me to that point. I had no idea that you could be 11 years old and dance like a 19-year-old, be capable of multiple pirouettes, double, triple tours, things that just had my jaw on the floor every single day. And it was part of that realization, which was why we ended up leaving the States. It was part of that reason why we ended up leaving Canada to move to the United States. My family recognized that I was a bit behind in my more conservative training. I remember going home every day that whole summer, and my mom and I still laugh about this. And I go, Mom, I suck. I said, I had no idea. I am so far behind. I'm doing my best. I didn't get despondent. I didn't get discouraged. It was a wake up call that, if anything, it kind of made me more like, not angry, but just irritated with myself and with what I felt like I was wasting time doing. And my mom didn't believe me. She said, no, Patrick, you're just being too hard on yourself. Everybody is good at something. You don't have to always be the best in the class. What's important is you do your work. I said, yeah, I'm doing that, but you're not going to believe this. So it comes time for the student showcase. And my mom sees what I see. David Alvarez in my class, who went on to win the Tonys for Billy Elliot, incredible dancer. Pirouettes like Jose Carreño at 10. After the whole thing, she said, wow, you were right. You suck. And it wasn't
that's so
even
great that your mom said that to you. Was it like,
exactly
amazing? Like,
yes, exactly. It was from my mom was able to sit there and go, well, he's participating. He's a part of this. He's here. He's in the room. That has to count for something. She immediately recognized that, yes, I'm talented. There was potential there. I had potential, but the training from where I was at that age was not going to get me. It wasn't going to keep me in the door at a place like ABT. So we knew that there needed to be shifts in my training. With the teachers departing Canada and moving back to China, that option for us to stay at the Go Ballet Academy was no longer possible. So we found different teachers that mirrored that same level of excellence and discipline and perseverance in Southern California that we would have had in Vancouver. The 4 years of being in Orange County, competing at Youth America Grand Prix, training on variations, pas de deux, learning contemporary dance was exactly what I needed to sort of get myself back onto that track of this is what you want to do with your life. So that was the long-winded version of like my first example. To the second and real concrete example was I was 14. This was my first year competing at the Youth America Grand Prix. Before the final round at New York City Center, YGP would announce the list of numbers that were recipients of scholarships from the school, because YGP was started as a scholarship competition. And it's one of the brilliant things about that competition is they can change kids' lives by providing them with wonderful opportunities to go and train, do a wonderful job sussing out the talent that might be isolated in remote parts of the world. My number came up. I think I was number 113, and my number had a big circle on it. And when I went to the scholarship table, I opened my envelope, and there was a full scholarship to the Royal Ballet School. Presented to me by Galen Stock. Every boy who's been in dance knows the Billy Elliot story, and that moment when he stares into the camera and he says, "I got in." That was a moment where I felt like I'm going to make it. And not only did I feel like I can do this, but I also felt the deep sense of it was worth it to stick it out, to fight for my right to be a ballet dancer, to keep my connection to music and art and ballet. It was one of the first real times I felt it was worth it to stick it out and not just, put my shoes away and go pursue martial arts or soccer or something more traditionally acceptable. This was a real moment where I felt like my plight to be a ballet dancer was starting to really pay off. The pivotal moment for me to acknowledge this is no longer a question. This is what you are going to do for the rest of your life. I can't necessarily dance for the rest of my life, but I fully plan to keep myself invested in ballet and the arts for, I want that to be my legacy. And that was the decision made when I was 14. With dance, your job usually starts when you are out of high school. Right. I got my job at 18. We don't have that period of figuring out what we want to do because a career in ballet is so short.
Right.
You can be a professional doctor, lawyer, politician well into your middle-aged life and past that. Your body will already start to, harshly saying, give way in your 30s. Right. And you have to adapt You have to adapt your training. You have to adapt your thought process for ballet class, for rehearsals, for performances throughout your career as you age. So we don't have the liberty of having those 6 or 7 years in college to figure out what we want to do. We have to make the decision as children to decide if we want to do this professionally or not. And that's a big ask for kids whose brains are still developing way into their mid-20s. With a supportive familial environment and teachers that are going to help you get there, you have to make that choice very young that this is what you want to do with your life.
I want to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah.
You've been really vocal about the bullying that you experienced as a kid. There's been a lot written about it. You've really been open about it. You said that a lot of the bullying that you experienced was at your regular school, and that your ballet school was your safe place. That was where you really felt at home. Not every kid, not every boy has the luxury of being in a ballet school that is their safe place, because they might be the only boy. Right. And
no, it's very true. Yeah.
And there are a lot of studios that are not necessarily equipped to know how to handle that situation. What do you say to the boys who might be on their own, where the bullying, it might happen at school, but it also, they might feel really alone in their own studio? And I know my son, he's now 18. He's in a second company. And the first ballet school he went to, he was the only boy. And he was fortunate. He had a male teacher who was phenomenal. But what do you say to those boys who walk in and they know they want to do ballet? They're really into this, like you were, but they walk in and nobody talks to them, and it's a tough environment, and there aren't supportive parents around.
Of course, it would immediately break my heart a little bit to hear any boy facing anything from exclusion to animosity from peers or from parents. That tells me that there's, of course, still work to be done. But I would say it's very similar work to dealing with an outside misconception about what boys can do in a ballet studio. It's it's my belief that it is a similar solution and an action plan that can take place to deal with that in-house. So it comes down to said boy or said young man dealing with this or feeling isolated in a environment. Communicate how you feel to those that can help you. If you are feeling excluded, it is not from anything that you have done wrong. There's no shame in you finding a place of belonging and comfort in a ballet studio. You do belong here. It's up to studio directors and parents and other students to help encourage that environment through classes that explore the proper facets of male technique. From getting to if you have this boy that learns one way or another, extroverted, introverted, outgoing, shy, it comes down to learning about how this boy is going to develop and really nurturing them in that environment in a way that they're comfortable. Some boys may deal well with that really intense drill sergeant that's going to hold them accountable and make them, line up and something with more of like a bellowing, prominent sort of gusto. Or maybe you're going to have a boy that likes a softer hand. Maybe there's boys out there that feel more comfortable with a female teacher, because that's who they are as people. And there's no shame in one way or another, but learning how these boys can learn. Learning how somebody learns is definitely a concept that we're exploring even in the regular education system. But that lesson can still apply in the ballet studio. Once you figure out how this boy is going to truly prosper in a ballet academy, the uncertainty and the unwillingness to welcome him in the studio will definitely it can dissipate if you keep an open mind. And for other girls in the studio, I would say, especially when it comes time for something like partnering, be a patient and understanding partner, especially because pas de deux is a lot of times at a young age a learning opportunity for both boys and girls. Girls have never been partnered, boys have never been partnered at this point. However, especially when girls go on point, a lot of pas de deux work is a ballerina maintaining the position that she knows how to do, or executing a step that she knows how to do either in her ballet technique or her point work classes. And now the responsibility of the gentleman is to frame that step that she already knows how to do. And your job is to make a pirouette multiple numbers of that turn, or to take a jump that she knows how to do and make it even higher. So she knows, she has a better understanding off the bat. A ballerina is going to have a better understanding of a saut de chat or a pirouette or a saute or a promenade on point. She will have a better understanding of that step off the bat. But teaching gentlemen how to partner is not like teaching gentlemen how to do a double tour or cabriole. It's a different coordination, and you're dealing with another person's body. You have to teach a boy how to find the center line of balance of a ballerina propped up on a tiny little shoe. And there's going to be a lot of trial and error. And because partnering is one of the most crucial elements of a male dancer's career, the most notable dancers are picked out of the corps de ballet almost instantly based on their ability to partner. Ballerinas always gravitate towards the best partners. And a male dancer's career can a lot of times be based on their ability to partner or not. So you don't want partnering or pas de deux to be a traumatizing experience for the boy. I had some instances in my own life where my teachers didn't want to, because I was a very small 12-year-old or 13-year-old. You see boys these days where they could pass for, a guy in their mid-20s and they're like, I'm 13. And it's a whole new world. But I was a very small, teenager, and especially as I grew up. So I wasn't ready to do a lot of the partnering that I would see older kids do. But teachers wouldn't bother even just teaching me how to keep a girl on her leg. They would just say, just hold her. Don't bother with this. Mm-hmm. So I always felt, growing up, it felt like an inferior partner when no one at the time really took the interest to teach me how to do age appropriate partnering. Mm-hmm. And that's a very crucial element. Partnering is not just telling a boy to go grab the smallest, tiniest little girl in the studio and put her over your head. Mm-hmm. That's not partnering. Partnering is the connection that you have with your other dancer, learning what works musically, learning where to hold someone, learning how to communicate how many pirouettes you want to do, how long you want to hold a balance. There's so many more facets of partnering that can be and should be explored at a younger age in a way where nobody is going to injure themselves. That's what I feel like girls can explore more. And just the understanding that there are so many fields in society that are very, as we all know, that are very male dominated. In certain aspects, those gender roles are reversed in the ballet studio. And not just the ballet studio, but also in general representation. You're driving down the highway and you see an advertisement for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And you see the girl that wishes to be a ballerina, mm-hmm. and the boy that wishes to be a doctor or a superhero. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with a poster that has a girl as a ballerina. But what it does is it's subtle non-intrusive exclusion. For the most part, it's better now, but I know that we still have more improvement here and there of properly representing the visibility of male dancers. Dance shops. Anyone that's been to a traditional dance shop they're almost the same, from the big Capezio store in Times Square to the smallest discount dance at the mall. It's a wall of pink tights and underbody, the nudie leotards that women wear, or tutus, competition clothing, and then tucked away in the back corner, hiding behind the giant poster, is one white ballet t-shirt made of an incredibly uncomfortable fabric and one dance belt that gives you as much support as a dishcloth. And and some ballet shoes that don't give you the necessary support that you need. Or you have the other end of the spectrum, with these boutique dancewear brands that are going to charge you $96 for a pair of black-footed tights. Mm-hmm. And sure, they use lycras that Nike and Adidas may use, but just the classist aspect and the very low accessibility of it all, it cuts off the general family that's just looking for good quality dancewear for their boy. Mm-hmm. So they don't have to go grab. There's so many times where I've seen boys that show up and they're wearing they're wearing women's black nylons because that's all that they know to go get.
Or they're wearing girls' leggings from Target. That was always the advice we got.
Yeah, exactly. Just go get those. Just go get those leggings. And unfortunately, that's all that was available. Mm-hmm. When we were, as we were creating Boys Ballet Summer Intensive, we wanted to be very clear to help students and parents understand the importance of a good quality uniform. It's like putting on your best suit to go to work. When you truly look your best, you can execute your steps, and you can feel your best, because there isn't that constant itch to readjust your shirt or pull your tights up. Because when teachers can have a care to do the research on how to make your male dancer presentable, because it is more difficult. The leotards made for women are typically just going to fit better. The pink tights that they make are generally going to fit better, but there's less care when it goes into things like dancewear for boys. Or just, it comes time for the big school show. This is another joke that my mom and I have constantly. The big school show is happening, and the 16 girls in their line have their perfectly picked tutus from, Costume Castle or etc. But then they just hand the boy the same blue vest that's been in the costume room for 15 years, and it doesn't fit him. It was made for a kid that was 15 years older than him. But they just whip stitch it and throw him on stage. And it's like, no, I think we can do better. And boys that feel like they don't belong in those environments, it can come from the ballet studio unless you take the proper care and attention to. All it takes is going online and looking at references of Paris Opera Ballet School, of Pacific Northwest Ballet School in Seattle, of the National Ballet School in Canada. These examples that you, even if you don't have the budget for, a wardrobe of all the different guys you have, you can make do with patterns that you can find online by, sussing out better brands to provide for higher quality dancewear. Because I've seen the difference so many times when we have boys that come to our program that just don't know what they're doing with their uniform. And my mom sometimes she would go sit upstairs and sew 10 waist elastics. Every mom with a boy in ballet knows what it looks like. It's ribbed. It's about 1.5 inches wide. It's white or it's black. You put it at the top of your tights and you roll it down. And such a simple thing like that, it makes all the difference. And these boys go, oh my gosh, I have legs. Now I know what my body looks like, or I look like everybody else. I don't feel like I'm wearing this super baggy cotton t-shirt anymore. I have something that shows how I'm supposed to look.
It's interesting. One thing that really jumped out at me as you were talking is whether or not boys are considered an afterthought at their local studio. And you were talking about costumes, right? That, the girls are all out there with their perfectly fitted costumes. And then, here's this boy who comes out with the arms of his shirt over his wrists and things like that.
Yeah,
and
I've seen it a lot.
I hadn't really thought about it, but it's almost as if, oh, right, we have to figure out what to do with the boy. And so a lot of this really seems to start at the studio level, at the studio head level, that they need to acknowledge that you do have two genders in this studio, and both of them need to be held to the same standards, but also treated the same way.
Yeah, exactly. And that is a lesson that I would love to see more studios, especially like smaller ones, learn from this example. Is there's a seriousness to, I'll speak to ballet. Dance in general can be very exciting and welcoming, and it gets kids ecstatic about it. But there is a serious, composed nature just in the upbringing of ballet, the history of it over the years, and that draws in kids that might find solace in that sort of schedule and that discipline, like my sister and I did. And in my very, very first dance studio, when I was in a more recreational environment, I remember as a kid having to be asked to be like Fred Flintstone at the front of the stage in this skimpy little caveman costume, banging on my chest going like yabba dabba doo. And I was mortified because at the time I was already starting to get teased a little bit.
Right.
And dealing with these people telling me, oh, this is wrong, this isn't for guys. And in instances like that, for me, I felt like they were right. Where, yes, I do feel uncomfortable. Yes, I do feel silly. And this is not something that I am enjoying anymore. So my teacher, she did an incredible job teaching me and the other few boys that were my age in our school. We were not a commodity to be used for clout for a studio. Here's our boy. We have a boy. Let's put him dead center. We were held to the same standard of, you are going to come to class composed, ready to go, and you are going to take yourself seriously. And the repertoire that she would have us do was in keeping with that. So instead of being like sometimes you'll see like a boy in dance be like the mischievous one or the butt end of a joke amongst all the other girls, while keeping the choreography very age appropriate with pas de basques and, poses and nothing pyrotechnic at that age. We would go on stage in gray tights, white blouses, sashes, and coiffed hair, mirroring a more academic version of what the senior dancers in our school were doing. And that made me feel incredibly inspired to be a ballet dancer, because I no longer felt like a target. I felt cool. As a kid, I was drawn to so much element of fantasy in comics or movies or video games. And I felt like I was in that sort of phantasmic realm, in that kind of environment. And it was very welcoming for me. I would love to see more of that from studios. And for the most part, when you teach young students either variations or duets from tried and true classical ballets, you do get an element of that. Sometimes that can cross over into pushing beyond the realms of capability for said student. And nobody wants to see like a 13-year-old boy tossing a girl way over their head when they're not ready for that kind of advanced level partnering. But if you can take those ballets and make them age appropriate, and still you instill the lessons of civility and chivalry and like compassion for yourself and your other cast members, you can teach the importance of ballet to a young audience if you're willing to basically, you take a chance on them, on the students, especially the boys. You take a chance on them and you go, okay, I want to do this for you. I want you to feel like you belong. And this is just a taste of what your life in ballet could look like. So that they don't always just have to be the butt end of a joke or the gremlin in a production.
Right.
You can give your young students the opportunity to be a prince. It just takes the care and attention to do so in a way that's respectful to age and development.
I want to talk about the Boys Ballet Summer Intensive a little bit.
Yeah, of course.
You just finished for this summer. And I actually remember when you launched it, my son was around maybe 8. And I remember thinking, he's not old enough to go yet, but when he's old enough, and we got as far as registering him, and then something came up and he wasn't able to go. It was a really interesting idea. You talked about a sense of belonging. You talked about taking boys seriously in a studio. Can you talk about how you brought some of those things into your creating the Boys Ballet Summer Intensive?
BBSI stemmed from looking at a need in our industry, seeing a lacking of truly tailor-made specific male dance training that could reach a variety of boys that, as we all saw, were in isolation in very rural parts of the United States, of Mexico City, of Canada. And we wanted the workings that I had as a male dancer, and we wanted to really formalize the training and provide it in an open-ended welcoming of students. It is, and the co-founders of this program are three women, because my mother, my sister Emma, and the International Ballet Academy executive director and another co-founder of BBSI, Patrick Frenette, those 3 women saw the struggles that boys would face on a regular basis just to dance, to do something that should be so natural for us. And the birthplace of BBSI came from pulling those boys out of isolation and providing them with the highest quality training possible. So say those boys weren't ready to get into a big school like Houston Ballet Academy or San Francisco or Ballet West. Say a family didn't have the money to spend the tens of thousands of dollars it takes to go spend 5 weeks in New York City at the School of American Ballet or the JKO school. We wanted to take those teachers who believed in our cause and bring them to an accessible location in North Carolina at a ballet academy that stood by the same vision of prominent male training that my sister, my mother, and I did. I mean, the first year that the seed of what BBSI grew from was an all-male dancer workshop. It was a free weekend. We put up posters here and there. Come one, come all. Boys ballet classes in Cary, scot-free. And we had incredible turnout. And it was my first time teaching.
Right.
I was barely 20, learning how to teach these boys. And from that program, the amazing turnout that we had, and we sensed the borderline desperation from these parents and boys to formalize this concept of all male training and really turn it into something. So then we all put our heads together and we acknowledged, what are the best parts of a male ballet dancer's summer intensive? It's those classes when you pull the boys out from the girls, the male instructor takes the lead, that environment of healthy competition that we all know comes very natural to boys, the camaraderie that boys find with one another, because whether it's spoken or unspoken, the plight that most boys face to be a ballet dancer remains the same. So whether they talk about it or whether they don't, they know that they had to fight to get in this room, and it pushes them to cheer each other on. And that's something that I always relish in whenever I've taught at BBSI throughout the years, is the new generations of boys that come there, they come out of their shell in ways that I don't even think they anticipated. They gain newfound confidence. They see what they're capable of, where the younger and not less capable, but just more green dancers who still have many years to train, they get to see every day what those dancers who are about to go professional, or the dancers that are professional like myself, they get a daily exercise of witnessing the final product of male dance training. And you get to see the trajectory from the introductory levels to the intermediate levels to the advanced levels. The program was created to show what that trajectory looks like without any interruptions of a super long lunch break, or being off for an hour or two because the girls have their point and variations class, or going to the dorm and then coming back at the end of the day for your partnering class. Those sort of extra classes, we wanted to fine tune this program so that it was about ballet training and the necessary syllabus required to be the best male ballet dancer that you can be, while still reaching back to those boys that are in isolation and saying, there is a place for you here in front of these teachers at these very prestigious academies. I gained my own wonderful vision for this program a few years in. It wasn't something that any of us have ever anticipated. A friend of mine who works at Disneyland now, he was at our first year attending this program, and he came to us after having a negative experience at one of the more prestigious ballet academies that he was in. And he was saying, I'm going to do BBSI because I think it's a wonderful program, but after this, I'm probably just going to quit. He was in class, and this was our year it was our first year hiring Jeff Rogers from the Ballet West Academy. And he teaches, and he's in charge of the men's division at the school there. Jeff, after a few days, walked into our office in the back room at the International Ballet Academy, and he said, I'm going to offer Ryan a trainee position to come to the fall and be at Ballet West with me. And I sat back in my chair and I went, you can do that? you can, wait a minute. And he said, I'm actually also going to offer it to this boy, Jacob, who was a student of my sister's and the other faculty, Nadia and Max, at the International Ballet Academy. So he offered two boys full-time training positions to Ballet West Academy. And what blew my mind is that earlier that year, he didn't get into the summer intensive when he did his regular Ballet West audition. And he was able to come to BBSI and get into the trainee position there from our program. And that opened up the realm of possibilities of what I knew this program could be. We were starting to change boys' lives. And the connections that we were making, it was the immediate proof. That was another moment when I had in my life, I was like, wow, we are doing a good thing here. It's one of the reasons why I'm so grateful that we have BBSI. And it's one of the best parts of this program is our weight training and body conditioning classes, because it's not just the work that you do in a studio that's going to get you your job. Your cross training is essential, especially with the demands of new classical and contemporary ballets that we learn. The physical demand is more than it's ever been. And it's important that guys learn the necessary strength building to be the best possible athletes and artists that they can be. And I remember having a guy come to me from one of the big schools in New York City saying, I'm really enjoying this program, but I would like as much help that you can give me in the weight training progress as possible, because I want to do Nutcracker Prince with my school. But my teacher was telling me that I'm not quite ready because of my partnering and my upper body strength. So I was able to work with him on a whole program on getting that strength in a healthy way that complemented his balletic training that he was doing every day. And I remember seeing on Instagram later, a few months later, he's doing his nutcracker pas de deux, and boom, press lift. And that was something that he said he struggled for months because it just wasn't happening for him, and he was feeling like he was a bit behind. And the message I got from him about that portion of the program helping him so much, that the work that we would do to train legs made his ballon increase as a dancer. The work that we would do in our body conditioning classes, where you're only using your body and your core. And the body conditioning classes have been just meticulously crafted so that I tell the boys, take this class with you. Obviously, some of you are far too young to be touching a weight right now.
Mhm.
We don't want you using this kind of equipment when you're so young, but you have your body as your instrument, and you can take this class with you every single day. The exercises that we do built, that are rooted in fundamental Pilates and gyrokinesis and yoga, it builds such strong cores. These guys are improving their pirouettes at a much quicker rate than if we were just having seminars about pirouettes.
Right.
They're learning how to use their muscles to execute balletic vocabulary in a stronger and healthier way. So this program is, for me, BBSI is the ability to change kids, trajectories, and find those boys in isolation that maybe they had a bad class, maybe they didn't get in because they just didn't have a good audition, but they come to our program because we only require minimum 2 years ballet training.
Some mental training with the boys, because it sounds like you really attract a lot of boys who really maybe are in a studio with only maybe one other boy, and they really do need that camaraderie and that group of boys. So do you do some things to really kind of help them see that there is a community, but also just build the mental strength of what it takes to be a ballet dancer, not just the physical?
Yeah, we have a lot of, technically oriented class or cross-training classes, but we also have classes, we like to call them informational seminars.
Okay.
So the informational seminar portion of our intensive, it delves into the mental capacity of each student on how you can be your best self going into the studio. If you are in isolation, what can you do to continue to immerse yourself? You can go to, I like to use my informational seminars I pull up YouTube, and the training, YouTube was one of my, it was one of the cruxes of me learning more about ballet as I was growing up. With the boom of internet culture as I was growing up, YouTube became more and more popular, and you were dealing with some of the first internet ballet sensations like Daniel Simkin, Carlos Acosta, even female dancers, Sofiane Sil with the super pirouette, the first viral ballet video ever. Just studying these different dancers on YouTube and watching, okay, this dancer is incredible at double tours. I am going to run my eyes dry studying these videos every single day so that I can work on my own double tours. This dancer is incredible at pirouettes and balancing. So I'm going to make my folder of this dancer's videos where I watch them for pirouettes and balancing. So I try to share my training opportunities and say, even if you are in isolation where you are, we now live in a society, thanks to social media. A lot of people are very quick to disdain social media. And for that, I do understand that it can be very distracting. However, if you use it as a tool, you can definitely open your mind to what is out there as far as professional dancers, and also for boys to know what other dancers look like at their age.
Sure.
So,
and I'm sure building community in,
yes,
just right there where it's all of a sudden they're all following each other on social media and they aren't alone.
exactly.
Digitally,
These,
right? And
yeah,
they
these
can kind of
bonds
reach
that
out.
these bonds that kids make at this program serves them throughout their entire life as a student, because especially with how many young boys and girls compete now, they can meet each other at our program, and then 5 or 6 months later they see themselves at the same regional competition in Winston-Salem, and they go, hey, it's good to see you.
Right.
And
Your kids come back every year too. I've noticed, like, I'm in a couple Facebook groups of parents of male dancers, and when summer intensive audition season comes around, there's all this talk about where kids are auditioning, and then all the parents are like, oh, and of course BBSI at the end of the summer. It's like, it's not even like a consideration. It's like they'll go wherever, and then of course they'll spend 2 weeks at your program, and it's every year since they were 11 they've been going.
Yeah, we have We have students that I have known. I've watched them grow up.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them have jobs now, and now instead of I don't count them as people I taught. Now I look at them as colleagues.
Right.
And it's an incredible sense of growth for me that I'm very proud of, to be able to repeat that process every year and see the students that continue to come back. We've been reaping the benefits of it, because we're seeing the progress and the trajectory that we see in these students that have believed in our cause from the first year. Like what you mentioned, Brett, about your boy being too young at the time, they still came back when they were of age, and they've been coming back every single time. And it's been paying off. Even when we've had different teachers come in, they find those kids that believe in the cause that all of the faculty and the directors do, and the work that we can do faculty to student is very good, because everyone that's there, we believe in the same cause, that it's important to highlight the training that a program like BBSI or other male focused dance programs exist out there now. Those programs have the same vision, and for that I celebrate that. And it's just great to see that the boys that do come back every year, when BBSI is non-negotiable for families, that's very good feedback for us, because it makes me very proud as an ABT dancer. I've made my job and my career at ABT, but I've been able to add another facet to my life in ballet by creating a program that is evidently making a difference in families' lives.
In your informational seminars, what are some concentrated work that you guys are doing to address the bullying that boys are facing in ballet, and kind of how to navigate that? Or are you giving them tools to help them deal with that within their year-long programs?
And most recently, and I'll count it as progress. Most recently, I like to open up my informational seminars to what the students would like to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been, in the past, I received more questions about braving bullies and dealing with pushback and discrimination. I dealt with that a lot more in the past than I do now. And I'll count that as progress. And I think that with the rise of so many profiles on social media celebrating what boys in dance and specifically ballet do, because there's such a prominent online community now of normalizing it, I think that there is less of that need to always go back to, we are boys in ballet and we are bullied.
Right.
But of course, it is an issue that continues to show itself in society, and it is always important to go back to that. And to those people, I echo what I said a few years ago with this article in Point Magazine. The number one thing that you can do for yourself with bullying is understand that none of this is your fault. You have a right as a boy to be a ballet dancer. If it is your passion, ride on the coattails of that passion and see how far it can take you, because braving the opposition and discovering what you're truly capable of as you grow up in ballet will show you a very, very rewarding and frankly magical journey through development and becoming an artist and growing up surrounded by music and culture and affirming yourself in a place that you know you belong. Getting to that point comes from recognizing this is not your fault. These are people's perceived beliefs about you that usually stem from a fear of not understanding. There's still a general there's a lack of understanding as to why boys would want to do ballet, because it can be perceived for women, or it's not perceived as a viable profession. It's not something that you can do professionally, when we all know that it can be. Mm-hmm. And people, as we all know, are very quick to fear and judge what they do not understand. Mm-hmm. So it takes properly educating what it is that we do, showing the world the variety of what male dancers can look like, not one perceived narrative of the guy in a tutu.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Of course, men will wear tutus.
Sure.
Of course they will. That is not the singular or the most common definition of a male dancer. A classical male dancer will wear white tights and a tunic, and that is the regular formula as we have all known. Costumes have definitely changed as ballet society has evolved, and we have much more experimental costumes and footwear. And for that, I truly celebrate. But as long as you are using the tutu in a matter of being the butt end of a joke or having it be the farce of the image of the male ballet dancer, you will continue to have that pushback of very limited and narrow-minded gender roles because it's not being taken seriously.
We would recommend for all of our listeners to read your article in Point Magazine that you wrote in 2020. So
yes,
is
that
there
would be
anything
wonderful.
you would actually like to add to that, 3 years later, to kind of expand on what you had written about?
Yeah, I would love to, especially because I remember publishing that article just a few weeks before the entire world shut down. It was such an interesting point in my life because I was really starting to progress through ABT after spending, at the time, like 5 or 6 years in the corps de ballet. I was about to work on my first few principal roles in the company. 2 weeks later, I was taking ballet class with my hand on this counter, doing ballet on this hardwood floor for the better part of a year. And what I learned through that experience is, do not take this profession for granted. Do your utmost best to continue to find the passions of being a ballet dancer, and don't let this just be an after school activity. Don't let this just be a job, because I never want to go that long in my life without having access to ballet, whether I will continue to dance or not. I never want to go that long without having the access that I do now as a ballet dancer again. And I learned so much more about what I was capable of and the commitments that I had as a dancer and as a man to this profession. I told myself every day I would wake up, I'm not just going to go back to work, I'm going to be better. And I remember actually just seeing Sha'Carri Richardson, who just won one of the women's world championships in track and field. She just said something very similar on TV. I'm not back, I'm better.
Yeah.
And I wanted to take that sort of mantra with myself and just say, when I go back to work, I am going to rededicate myself. And as you are students, if there are students that would listen to this, when you become a professional, change nothing about your thought process. Continue the student mentality. Listen to instructors and keep an open mind. Keep an open mind to wanting to work. In some ballet companies, ballet class is optional. And whenever I tell that to students, they go, "What? I miss out on this and that in my show if I don't take ballet class." Of course it's mandatory. In some ballet companies, the class is not mandatory. Take class. Track your progress. Film what you do. Whether you post it or whether you don't, whether you have an active social media or you don't, filming yourself is an incredible way to track your progress. It helps you stay on top of what you are capable of, and it helps you have a better understanding of knowing your worth as a dancer. So definitely show up to work ready to be your best self. And your best self will differ as you get older. Your best self is not always going to be the same measurable. You may not have gotten any sleep the night before. You got in a fight with your family. These are regular things that happen in human society. You can still, despite any obstacles and against all odds, you find the best of what you are capable of that day and you commit to it. And that is a lesson that I would love for all students and fellow professionals to operate with, because then we can really maximize what we as artists and athletes are capable of. So keep a student mentality. That's what, if I could add anything, is don't ever get too big for growth, and keep an open mind to guidance and instruction. There's this whole culture of you have to be finished when you're a professional. That's a myth.
Yeah.
You do have to have a presentable level of technique and talent, but the work is not done when you become a professional. If anything, you're just getting started. It's a fresh start.
Well, there's the whole notion of peaking, and you don't want to peak at 18.
No, you don't. I'm still discovering. I'm going to be 29 in 3 months. I'm still discovering ways that I can improve myself as a dancer and person. And I had my 2 best seasons with American Ballet Theater in my 9th and 10th years in the corps de ballet. And for that, I'm very grateful. It's shown me, though, what I'm capable of, what I can learn from those performances, and how I can better them for even next time, so that I can maintain my own trajectory of what I want for my career through dialogue and having an open mind on how to improve myself constantly, and never being out of touch of where I am with my career.
We asked our listeners to send us some questions for you. And
Awesome.
So we have a couple of those for you. So the first one is, what is your opinion of comparing ballet to competitive sports? And I know it's a way to attract boys to dance, but is it putting boys in a no-win situation?
Western culture definitely operates in a sense of, we want a measurable, we want to see progress, we want to see a prize at the end of this. We want to know how our child compares to other kids his age in whatever this profession or activity is. The crux of the issue here is of this never-ending debate: is ballet a sport? Is it an art form? No matter your definition of what it is predominantly, it is an art form. However, dancers are most certainly athletes. As basketball players are athletes, dancers and the rigorous schedules and diet regimes and rehearsal processes and touring life that we have to maintain on a daily basis, we are most certainly athletes. The aspect of competing in dance, the prize is in the training. Competitions can provide students the ability to get one-on-one coaching with their teacher. And in that ability, you pull out the student recognizable who's going to, display some level of talent or potential to have a career. You pull them apart to get them ready for competitions, either as a solo competitor or in a pas de deux category. And that kind of intimate training is very beneficial for students, because the teacher has no other students to look at but the one or two people that are right in front of them, and they can tailor make their corrections for exactly what this student is going to need. The aspect of general corrections goes away, and all eyes are on this one or two students. And in that period, more times than not, you will see great progress from when a dancer will begin training for the competition to when they actually go on stage. The next thing to keep in mind is the aspect of going on stage for those competitions is incredibly beneficial for students, because it gives them stage exposure, alleviating those nerves of stepping out on stage by yourself. With enough repetition of that process, students become much more accustomed to feeling that sense of bare and open stage and a black, abyss of an audience that you don't see, and the nerves of your costume and your makeup and the lights on you. Those are the true prizes of competitions for me. And on top of that, as I mentioned with Youth America Grand Prix, the scholarships and the connections that you can make getting in front of the right people who want to help further your life in ballet. Prizes are an incredible boost to self-esteem and a recognition of merit and technical capability and contribution to a festival or competition. I recognize that. And the feelings that I would get when, for instance, the number one prize that more than any other prize that I got, that I was very grateful for winning, was in 2011 in New York City. I won the Mary Day Award for Outstanding Artistry. I didn't make top 12 that year, comparative to what other people for what other families might view as success or not. According to some people, I would have gotten snubbed. But the Mary Day Award for me was a huge honor, because it showed that I went there to do what I intended, which was to dance and to play the character that my coach emphasized for me to embody. And the different pieces that I did at Grand Prix that year were very rare. Instead of doing a big showboat competition pas de deux like Don Q or Le Corsaire, I was dancing Chopignana or Les Sylphides. I was playing the poet in a ballet russe classic. And that pas de deux was so difficult at 16 years old. I didn't get it at first, because I was like, oh, but I want to do the Don Q pas de deux. I want to do Corsaire. Those are exciting. This pas de deux doesn't really interest me, until I got to work on it. An award acknowledging artistry is incredibly important, because that is what dance is all about, is, yes, the physical nature of dance and the incredible virtuoso steps, especially the ones that men get to do. it's essential to the development of a male dancer. But at the end, the artistic capacity of a dancer, your ability to tell the story, is rare. It's that capability of what teachers sometimes say cannot be taught, just to be able to stand on stage and command an audience without doing a single thing. That was a huge honor for me to receive that award, because that made my intention as a performer to dance and to entertain and to be myself. That was a huge accomplishment for me. Mm-hmm. Next to any regional Grand Prix award that I got, which of course I was very grateful for, it was this award that didn't have to do anything else with predominantly getting an acknowledgement for your performance.
Can I build on that a little bit? One of the things you see like in the media is, you always see that poster of, oh, you play football, isn't that cute? I can lift girls with one arm. And it's always like the focus on the athleticism and right. Yeah, you're a football player. I throw girls in the air and I always catch her. You don't always catch the ball.
If ballet were easy, it would be called sports. Like exactly. I totally right. And it's about societal, it's typical societal chest banging because of
that does to the boys where those messages are the ones that are always being sent to them that, oh yeah, you do ballet, you're just as big an athlete as the football players.
I'd say it depends on the boy. It's like earlier, we were discussing different learning processes. Mm-hmm. Some boys are going to find comfort in knowing that the athleticism and the technicality and the demand of ballet gives them the competitive challenge and the need to progress and be strong. It gives them that sense of accomplishment that those boys need. There still needs to be space for boys to be able to look at ballet and see the wider spectrum of what a career in dance looks like. So for the boys that don't need to have that macho gusto put in their face at all times, they'll sit until the end of Billy Elliot and watch Billy take the stage in Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake. And they'll go, that's what I'm looking for. So there needs to be that moment there needs to be that representation of saying, it's all encompassing. I view the extra boisterous marketing campaigns of showing all the physical prowess of dancing. I view it as a sometimes necessary approach to prove the validity and significance of men being in ballet after so many years of exclusion, animosity, discrimination, and just complete irrelevance to the fact that we're even there. Mm-hmm. We're not just the misconstrued, we're not just the misinterpreted guy in the tutu for you to poke fun at. So that the extra nature of what guys do, it was done in a desperate attempt to push back against that. Sometimes it's necessary, sometimes I don't think it's necessary. It's just depending on how these boys are going to internalize it. So it's up to the individual to go, yes, I do like it when male dancers are perceived that way, or no, I don't. I'm looking for something else in ballet. I'm looking for something that's more closer to home to how I feel as an artist and as a performer. I would say it's down to the individual. And yes, I do think we can continue to show a broad spectrum of what a career as a male dancer looks like.
I'm going to read this because it's kind of long and then I will try to interpret it. My son is almost 16 and as a ballet dancer is confident in his masculinity and his position as a male dancer. And yet the regular biased messaging is still wearing on him. He cringes when the only message to boys who want to dance is their role of hypermasculinity, quote, blending in the background to support the girls and athleticism, as we just talked about. None of the reasons he dances. He dances because he loves dance. The artistry, the physicality, the performance, and yes, the beauty and sense of awe. For some reason, this isn't enough of a reason for boys to dance. He's learning to dance on point because of the skill and lines that are beautiful on stage. Appreciating and wanting to be a part of this should be welcomed and encouraged and doesn't take away from other male roles that he also enjoys. On the flip side, though, he wants to be able to do some push-ups in the back hallway without girls making jokes about toxic masculinity. He often feels that regardless of his choices as a male dancer, people are putting him in a box and judging him.
Very astute. Those are very astute observations. So yeah, what kind of question do we see from all of this? For what something I can speak to. So for point work, I fully celebrate it. There are even roles at ABT that require the men to go on point, like Bottom in Frederick Ashton's The Dream. So point work for men, I fully encourage. However, it's important to acknowledge young women are picked at a very young age to go on point. They do a very, very serious amount of pre-point training. They get their shoes perfectly fit for their feet. The shape of the box needs to be appropriate for the width or narrowness of the foot. The shank needs to be properly looked at. Are the sides too high? Is the vamp too low? I know this from my own sister having a professional career in ballet. I saw the work that she had to do to get ready for point work. I fully celebrate students, especially boys, finding comfort in their individuality. With point work, you have to make certain that, again, it's not the teachers going, my boy is on point. And that's going to be all over our school's social media because it's great. And that's what people want to see right now. Do not take a performative approach with this. You need to treat the boy with as much respect and keep them as disciplined and focused on point work as you would your ballerinas. Mm-hmm. It's important to teach them that these shoes, if not done properly, you can run serious risk of injury if you do not give the point shoe the proper training that's necessary to execute it properly. That's why when you look at companies with incredibly successful non-binary dancers that go between doing male identifying roles and female identifying roles, they transition so well because they've done the appropriate training based on point work and traditional men's technique. And they've done all of the necessary work. They didn't just throw point shoes on because it was the current trend and their dance teacher thought it would look great on their social media page. It was done with care and an attention to detail with a lot of injury prevention. So that's as far as point work. I fully celebrate that exploration so long as it is done from a place of care.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And can I ask you, kind of ending on a note of moving forward and looking towards the future? So I'm the mom of a girl. What can parents do to really help their daughters make boys feel more included in their studio setting when there's maybe only one or two of them? Like, especially at that younger age, to kind of keep the boys going, make those boys want to stay in the studio?
Oh, that's a good question. I definitely found myself in my younger years of my life being that boy that you mentioned, the one boy amongst a few of many girls. And I had a few older boys to look up to, but there was certainly an age gap there. I mentioned this a bit earlier. As far as the technique goes, when you're learning partnering, keep an open mind and be very patient and understanding as boys learn how to manipulate your body so that they and also you don't hurt each other. But as far as the social aspect of it, have a care to get to know this boy a bit more. See what his interests are, know what your interests are, and find a way to welcome him into the circle in a way that he's already going to feel vulnerable and on the spot enough. So because chances are from regular society, people aren't going to understand why he's doing ballet. So there's a degree of isolation that can come from there, as we all know. But then there is another degree of isolation that can happen from a good place of wanting to make the boy feel so special and so desired and coveted that it's like the spotlight is on them constantly. And that can sometimes, chances are that can breed envy and not understanding why this boy is garnering so much attention from said teacher or choreographer, etc. So keep a sense of empathy open that this boy is going through a lot to be in the ballet studio. Once you get to know how this kid is going to get along with others, extroverted, introverted, more, chill, proceed accordingly. And if you have any more questions, of course, just go to your parents and try to create a support network for this kid. And more times than not, I think boys just want to feel like they belong. They want to feel in the dance studio like this is where they are supposed to be. If a girl gets catty or, isolating because they're coming from a place of like, oh, well, he's getting all the attention from the teacher today, so it's not for any other reason than the teacher is just not divvying up the attention properly between the single boy and the 40 girls in the room. So it's not because of anything this boy did. It's because of the imbalance between the number of boys to girls in a traditional dance academy setting. And that boy is being brave and courageous enough to still come to ballet class, even though the cards are going to be stacked against him in one way or another, from regular society to feeling like an outsider in the own community that they so desperately try to belong in.
Point that you made, though, about not always putting the spotlight on the boy and making him earn it a little bit, because
of course,
I think that does build a little bit of the resentment from like the girl perspective of, maybe he's not that good at turns, and the 4 girls next to him are much, much better. Like making him earn that center spot rather than just giving it to him because he's the boy. I think that's actually a great note for studio directors too, to remember that. And that has to be an incredible amount of pressure for that one boy to always feel like he has to be on and be the best because he's in the center at all times and has that focus, rather than learning to be a core, even in as one.
I fully see what you're saying, and we definitely see those boys. We see those boys at the intensive every year, and the wake up call that they get is very similar to the ones that I experienced when I was 11. Of wow, I'm not the big fish in a small pond anymore. There are students there is a very, very big realm of capability here, where yes, there are things that I can do in my class that other boys can't, but there are a whole other list of things that I certainly can't do yet. And how am I going to internalize that information? Yes, I think that it's important to definitely keep boys in the studio by making them feel like they are a part of the group. A part of the studio, a part of the academy, not this isolated entity and commodity, because then it just becomes performative. Like I said earlier, we have our boy, we are special. It's about nurturing that talent, or making that dancer grow into a young adult that's going to be respectful and have a sense of discipline.
I think it's interesting. One thing you said that about, we have this boy, that's really hard on the boy too.
It can be, yeah.
They're not asking for that, right? They're not asking to be put in the middle. And so, I watched what happened with my son when he was at our local ballet studio. And again, like his studio had very high expectations. You were expected to earn everything, whether you were a boy or a girl. But it was a similar situation to what you were in, where there were other boys at the studio, but they were 4, 5, 6 years older than he was.
You could see the track.
Right. Well, or not. Some of those boys were doing it recreationally. One was in his 20s and had always wanted to dance, but his parents wouldn't let him when he was younger. So once he became an adult, he started taking classes.
That's also true. Yeah.
Right.
That's super cool.
It was super cool, but I think it was hard for him to be with a bunch of 12-year-olds. Yeah. But, more power to him. But I think the thing that was a real game changer for my son, Jenny had brought up the social part. Once he started getting included in things, and it's, there's the whole culture of getting to the studio earlier to stretch, right? And kids will be there 30, 45 minutes early. And the first couple of weeks he was at his studio, he'd come home and say, no one's talking to me. Like nobody's talking to me. I just sit there. And what was a real game changer is when the girls decided to go across the street to Starbucks to get a cup of coffee, and they invited him. And
it's the little things. They really make a difference.
Yeah. Those little things. And I don't really have an answer for how you do that, other than to say to the parents, like, help create inclusivity at the studio, because those little things, like going to Starbucks, like the birthday parties, like the sleepovers, that was when the game really changed for my son. And all of a sudden he felt like, oh, you know what? I actually belong here. I'm not the afterthought.
Yeah. Brett, you just nailed it. It is accumulation of little acts of kindness that can make the entire difference in feeling isolated and put on the spot to feeling like you truly belong in the ballet studio. You nailed it on the money. That's exactly right.
Is there anything we haven't covered that you would like to talk about, or any final thoughts?
I would say that just about covers it. I think that there were some really excellent questions from your listeners, and to these dance parents, I say thank you for especially to the moms and dads of parents who have come to BBSI and believing in our vision. Thank you for trusting us with your kids. Thank you for sharing the vision that we do for providing such an inclusive, but also, intense training environment for your sons and daughters. And thank you for having me on this platform to share, a piece of my story. I'm very glad that, I've arrived in a society now where it felt like my life as a boy who was bullied for ballet was going to be inescapable.
Mm-hmm.
And the work that I did with Scott Gormley to discuss that in depth and put that on film was very cathartic for me, because as much as I was vocalizing it and putting it on the screen, it felt like I was closing a chapter in my book, moving on to being the accomplished dancer and person that I was going to, continue to grow to be. And adding this whole other facet to myself of being a co-director of a boys intensive, providing this service to kids who found themselves exactly where I was when I was 8 years old, and giving them and extending a hand back and saying, it's okay to dance. Just the simplest thing of that, like that. You belong here. And we have created an environment where you and other boys your age and older can come and train and be your best selves. And we can help you be the best dancers that you are. It's helped me as a ballet dancer. I still have many more years as a professional dancer with ABT that I want to get under my belt.
Mm-hmm.
I have many more roles to perform. I have many more opportunities that I can't wait to accomplish, and milestones that I can't wait to accomplish at ABT. But now I know what I do it for. There were so many years that I felt like I was dancing out of spite to prove everyone wrong and go, I'm going to do it. Just watch me. And for a time that was more than enough. But when I really learned how to let that place of spite go and work to be the example of a male dancer who braved the bullies and was able to make systemic change to the system and provide a better opportunity for boys that might be going through the same thing that I did. And that's a part of my life that I'm very proud of now. So I want to say thank you to you guys for seeing what I see and what my family sees about boys in ballet, and helping me and all of us have these dialogues about how to continue to improve the environment, because it's always a growing process. And I can't wait to see how much better we can all continue to share the same voice and vision with each other and improve what already has grown by leaps and bounds. So thank you.
This is great. Thank you. And just one quick shout out to Scott Gormley's documentary.
Yes, sir.
I think
absolutely.
Every parent of a female and a male dancer should watch that. That to me was another game changer when my son and I watched that together. It was amazing.
I was very proud of that. And I was very proud of my sister being in it, and Peter Stark and Derek Dunn and these other colleagues of mine. It was done with so much care and so much attention to not only showing the plights that we had, but what it looks like, the end result, the end game of standing true to your belief as wanting to be a male ballet dancer, what that looks like down the road. And I think that Scott did a phenomenal job framing that beautifully.
I agree. And for anyone who's listening to this, we will have links where you can find the documentary and watch it. So Patrick, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much we appreciate your time.
Oh, this was my utmost pleasure. Thank you, Brett and Jenny. This was so wonderful to be able to share my story with all of you listeners. Thank you for tuning in. ABT's fall season is the last 2 weeks of October. And if you're in New York City, come on out, because ballet is back. We are out of our homes. We are performing, and you get to see the incredible talent of America's National Ballet Company. The shameless plug, I'm going to do it. We need ticket sales.
Plug away.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. It's going to be an amazing season, and our season is definitely going to highlight, everything that we've talked about male dancing. It's on full display in a company like ABT, and it would mean the world to me to know that you guys can come out and see what your boys aspire to do with their lives. You can see that when you go see any ballet company. So
Wonderful.
Thank you, and keep it up the good work, guys. Truly.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. We hope you found this conversation with Patrick informative and engaging. Don't forget to check out the links in our show notes for the Dancer documentary, Patrick's article in Dance Magazine, and the details about the Boys Ballet Summer Intensive. If you liked what you heard on this episode, please take a moment to help us spread the word. Leave us a review on your preferred podcast platform, tell a friend, and share on your social media. Also, as your dancers return home from their summer intensives, please head over to theballethelpdesk.com and leave us an anonymous review of the program. Help your fellow dance parents by letting them learn all about the good, the bad, and everything in between. To stay in the loop on all of our latest content, subscribe to our newsletter at ballethelpdesk.com and follow us on Facebook and YouTube. Until next time, have a great day.